Hello, welcome to Red Book Joy. Today I've got a reading ramble. If you're new to the channel, I'm Jack, and if you're not new, welcome back. And today I have got a reading ramble for the first time in a month. So on Saturday it'll be exactly a month since I posted my last reading ramble, or since I recorded it anyway. And it's been 2 weeks since I posted a video, and I haven't even watched much booktube. I haven't looked at my comments. I have been very, very, very busy, and so yeah, it's been a while. But I've been really determined this year to get posting regularly, but I've decided as well that I'm not doing that at the expense of kind of my well-being. So this past week or two I've had a lot going on with work, with personal life, and I've just been trying not to post videos if it's the same day, because it's just stressful. If I have time and I've got quite a quiet day, I could probably film a video, edit it, have it out by the afternoon. But yeah, I've just not been doing that because I've been busy. So Sunday I would have posted, and I actually planned to post, but I ended up working until 2 p.m. and at 2 p.m. exactly I wanted to watch the lovely plod along, which is the first one for the Women's Prize plod along that's being hosted by Charlie Brooke and Alice from Alice and Giant Bookshelf and Gemma from Gem of Books. So I wanted to join in that, and I wanted to do some reading for myself. So I decided I'll join the plod along, however long it is. If it's over an hour, then I may just sack off filming and not do it. And that's what I did. And then I spent the whole afternoon after the plod along reading. So I had a delightful time, and I'm glad I did it. So if you run a booktube channel and you think, oh, some weeks I don't know how I can keep to my schedule. I wouldn't want to put people off posting regularly if that's what you want to do, and if it bothers you not to post regularly, but just think about, this is a hobby. Let's face it, we don't do this because it's going to make us money, that it's a job. It's a hobby, and if you are too tired and too stressed, or if it feels like work, then maybe just take a break from it. So that's kind of what I've been doing for myself. So I do apologise. What I should do really is put up a community post when I do that. But does anyone else think their community posts, like, no one really sees them? I just get the impression that no one really sees my community posts. I don't really get many comments or likes on them unless I tag people in them. And I don't often see other people's community posts unless I happen to stumble upon them as they're posted. It's annoying. I find it very frustrating, actually. It'd be really nice if there was a tab on YouTube where community posts could be like, you could look at community posts and feeds and go through them. But yeah, so that's me. That's my little moan about YouTube for the moment. But yeah, like a life update. So my cat Pedro had an operation, which last video I posted, I think I held him up. He's still having problems. He had a lump removed, and thankfully there was nothing sinister. It was an abscess, as it turned out. We waited a week to find that out. He had like 10 days with a huge scar on his side that had to heal. He had his stitches out. The wound opened up again. He had to go in and have general anaesthetic to have it stitched up again. So yeah, he's still at home, still not happy because he's an outdoor cat and he doesn't like being stuck in the house. So he's very stressed. So that's been difficult. And on top of that, we decided to engage an estate agent to put our house back on the market with a different agent this time. And we did. And within a week of us engaging the estate agent, we had like loads of viewings on our house. So we've been sorting the house out and then staying away from the house while people are looking at it and stuff like that. So yeah, that's why things have been quite a lot. And on top of that, trying to do work and stuff, which has been a lot as well. So yeah, I've been in between all of that. I've been just trying to take care of myself and my own well-being. So yeah, that's why I haven't been around that much. So today I have a day off. I'm going to film a couple of videos. I have some very exciting news and announcements to make. So one of those videos will be an announcement video, and it will probably go up before this reading ramble. But I'm not sure yet because I might post this tonight. So I'm not going to say what it is, but it's possible you already know. So I DNF'd 2 books and I finished 10 books since we last spoke, and that is a lot for me. I'm not a fast reader. I was quite shocked when I looked on Goodreads and saw that's how many I'd finished. But that's a good amount for me. Not that it's about the amount, as I keep saying. But yeah, my 2 DNFs, just to talk about them quickly. Tigana by Guy Gavriel Kay. I'm going to link in the description box videos by Sandy from Miss Reads a Lot and Dia from Novel Idea, who summed up this book really well because they both finished it and they both had the issues that I have with it. I DNF'd it because it's a fantasy, standalone fantasy, classic sort of 90s standalone fantasy book that is very well loved. And before people sort of in the comments say, oh, but I love that book, yeah, I can see why people loved it. There are a lot of positives about Tigana. I really enjoyed the central plot, though that kind of got a bit lost through the middle of the story, and I read 500 or just under 500 of the 700 or 800 pages of the book, so I wasn't far off the end when I DNF'd it, and I really loved the opening 5 chapters, and I thought, this is going to be amazing, this is going to be as amazing everyone says it is. His writing is very eloquent and poetic and really enjoyable, so I was told he had beautiful writing, and it's true, he did have beautiful writing. Then what happened? Well, lots of gratuitous sex, lots of female characters having to have sex for reasons that I don't understand. Now, I'm not a prude, but I do like there to be some purpose to sex scenes in books, because I'm not a romance reader. I'm not someone who enjoys reading steamy romance and things like that. I will read it on occasion if the book is good and I can see there's a purpose for it. But yeah, that's not kind of what I want to read fantasy for, really. And then when we noticed that all this gratuitous sex is happening with these female characters, there was also incest between 2 very, very close family members. Now, I don't understand why that was in there. I've no idea to this point today why that was in the plot, why that was essential for these characters. I've no idea. None of us could fathom why it was in there. The other thing was there were just lots of really extreme things that went on, and the point that I was out on was when 2 female characters encountered each other and for some reason started touching each other's breasts apropos of nothing, and the one of them was childlike, and then the phrase childlike breasts came up, and I was just like, I am out at this point. So yeah, I was just at that point, I am out. So yeah, unfortunately I didn't finish Tigana, and I know it's very well loved by a lot of people, but yeah, didn't want all of that in the book. The second DNF I had was a book by Bella Osborne. Now, the first book I picked up after Tigana was a palette cleanser for me, and it was brilliant, and it was a recommendation from Amy at BookTube. With Amy last year, I've had it on my Kindle TBR for ages, and it's on Kindle Unlimited, and it's The Library by Bella Osborne, which is a gorgeous contemporary fiction all about an older female protagonist and a young teenage boy who are both extremely lonely, and they meet at the local library in their village and they form a friendship, and it's a lovely, lovely friendship. I loved it, absolutely loved this book, and I felt that the characters were just wonderfully written and I just cared about them so much. So then after loving that so much, and Amy, you're right, great book, lovely, and Amy likes an older protagonist and I do too, so yeah, when she recommends a book like that, I know it's going to be good. Followed on with Bella Osborne's book The Girls, which is also on Scribd, because I listened to the audio on Scribd of The Library, and so the audio of The Girls is on there, so I thought I'll listen to that, and I started it. I got about a third of the way in and it's just okay, and I don't want to read anything that's just okay, and also I didn't really care about the characters. So that was about 3 or 4 female friends who were much older, who'd shared a flat when they were younger. It just didn't feel like it was going anywhere, so I DNF'd that. So those are my 2 DNFs, and my first successful read after the DNFs was The Library. Then I read something very different, and again it was because of Amy from BookTube with Amy and Ange from Ange's Book Chatter, who are running a Fiction Addiction book club. This was their February pick. I picked it up on the 28th of February, right at the end of February, so I kind of finished it in March, but it was a really good book. It was The Anomaly by Hervé Letellier, and I would say that Fiction Addiction Book Club have had 2 books so far that I've read of theirs, and both of them have been really good books that I would probably never have picked up, so thank you very much for the recommendations. The Anomaly is a fascinating premise about a plane that is travelling from Paris to New York, and it goes through a storm, and it lands, and people think, they think they're going to die in this storm. The storm is horrific, it's like a superstorm, and they land the plane safely and everyone's on board is safe, and we follow the paths that, say, I think about 10, 11 or 12 people on the plane take. So this isn't like a story with a central character, it's more of a story with a central idea. And then what happens is we follow the lives of these 12 or so passengers, and 6 months later, after their plane has landed safely, we discover that another plane, the exact same plane with the exact same people on it, lands in New York, and the premise is, that's the premise. So this exact copy of the plane, the exact same people, lands it's 3 months later. So it's kind of a book about situation and what that might look like, what might happen, how kind of exploring how and why it might happen, because all these characters have this existential kind of like, why is this happening? And then yeah, it's a really good high concept book, very philosophical, of course, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think the fact that it doesn't have a real central character and central plot that is like wrapped up and there's a problem that's solved, because without spoiling it, this issue, there are a lot of questions at the end of the book, but I liked that because I just like the idea that I like a what if, what would happen. So I really enjoyed The Anomaly, and I'm going to go and watch the live show that Ange and Amy did about it. I still haven't watched that yet. Again, haven't been watching BookTube, but yeah, I would highly recommend joining their club. It's so good. I can't remember what the book is for this month, but I'm going to link their announcement videos below so you can go and check it out and join. The next book I read was a 5-star, and I'm not going to talk about it here. I don't normally give star ratings, but I'm saying it's a 5-star because I think it's my book of the year so far, and that's Goodnight Mister Tom by Michelle Magorian. Classic children's book about World War II, and again, older protagonist and a younger, like them form a bond and a relationship. I must have, I've got a real thing for that, haven't I? Clearly. I cried at least 3 times, and for the last time I cried reading an entire chapter. It was just heartbreaking but beautiful. I loved Goodnight Mr. Tom. I can't believe I've never read it before. I then immediately went and watched the TV show because I've got the TV tie-in cover, but I'm not going to talk about it anymore because we're going to do a live show. So this was our book club pick for a FOMO book club, which Alice and Gemma and I run, and I'll leave a link about that in the description box. You can come and join us. So far, the majority of our books I've loved all of them. I think I've really enjoyed all of them. There's not one that I haven't. So yeah, we're going to do a live show on my channel at the end of April about that. So I'm not going to talk about it anymore. Then I got FOMO because I watched a live for the Tudor Along, which is being hosted by Gemma from Gemma Books and Emily from Novell Novels. They're reading Alison Weir's 6 Tudor Queens series, and they're on the 5th book, or they finished the 5th book, Katheryn Howard, who is Henry's 5th wife. And I've always been intrigued by Katheryn Howard. I read the first book in this series with the read along, and then I just dipped out of it. But I really enjoyed this Katheryn Howard story because I think she was quite sensitively portrayed. I think she was anyway. I was watching the live and there was some disagreement about, whether she deserved this or that. As far as I'm concerned as well, I just think none of these women deserved what they got at the hands of Henry VIII, because he was just, a tyrant. He was a tyrant. He was a king with ultimate power. He murdered 2 of his wives because they were supposedly unfaithful. Well, Katheryn Howard was unfaithful. Anne Boleyn, but I just think Katheryn Howard, to me, she could have been anywhere between 15 and 21 when he married her. And so I think in the book they put her at 19. But she was extremely young, and he was in, I think he was in his 50s when he married her. And at this point he was, really physically, he couldn't even barely walk because his leg was so badly ulcerated. And she married him, and she was a young girl, and she was a pawn, and she was put in front of him to entice him so that men could use her to get to him and have power. So yeah, I just felt so sorry for this character, like the character in the story, because of course it's not the real Katheryn Howard. This is Alison Weir's interpretation of it, but I think she interpreted her. She's not a bad character. She was just a young girl who fell in love with various men, and yeah, after she married the king, she still had her head turned by younger men. So I felt so sorry for her. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. The lighting has just changed because I've had to put the light on. The lighting has got really bad since I started this video. Then I read The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana. And this book I got on a 99p Kindle deal because I was in the mood for I've been in the mood for cozy fantasy, and I've read quite a bit of that recently. This was what I thought was cozy fantasy. It's not. It's actually paranormal romance, contemporary, I would put it down as. And yes, if that's what you're in the mood for, it was good. It was a good version of that. However, that's not what I wanted, but I was enjoying the book enough to finish it. But I thought it was going to be a cozy fantasy, and it wasn't. And what should have tipped me off initially is, I'm British, so I don't mind swearing. Swearing doesn't bother me, but if you don't like F-bombs, there's F-bombs all the way through it. And it doesn't bother me reading things like that, but I wouldn't recommend it as a cozy book for that reason, because for me, cozy is very wholesome, and this just wasn't quite. There was some really wholesome parts to it, but then there was also the romance element, which I'm reading it and I thought, just going to check the blurb properly. I didn't really see it said romance. So yeah, it's more like a contemporary romance with a magical twist. So yeah, if you want that, I'd recommend it. It was very well done. I liked the audiobook as well, but yeah, it wasn't quite what I wanted to read, but it was okay. Then I finally finished T. Kingfisher's A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking. This was really, really good. I've read two T. Kingfisher books now, and she manages to write some quite harrowing scenes. There's a little bit of scary stuff in there, very minor scary stuff, and I'm quite a wimp, but this is a really brilliant story it's a definite cozy fantasy about a sort of city in a fantasy sort of land where they've got wizards within the city, but some of them are really all powerful and the kind of wizards you imagine, and some of them just have a very specific magic that they can do. And the main character in this is a 14-year-old girl whose magic is all around baking. And it sounds really corny, but it's really well written. I like T. Kingfisher's writing style. I really enjoyed this book. Not brilliant, but really enjoyable, and I just thought it was great. So I would class that as pretty much cozy fantasy, apart from the fact there's a lot of murder and stuff in it. But yeah, it's really sweet, and I just love the idea of this girl wizard whose skills are around baking, and how that is sort of worked into the book, and how she in the end has to save the city with her magic, and it's really, really well done. I must have been on a witchy kick, because then I read this book, Hex. Look how beautiful this cover is. So this is a series of books from a very small publisher. The publisher is Polygon Books. I say they're very small. I'm assuming they're a small publisher, and they're publishing a series of books by Scottish authors. And this one is they're called Darkland Tales, and this is one. The best modern Scottish authors offer dramatic retellings of stories from the nation's history, myth and legends. These are landmark moments from the past, viewed through a modern lens and alive to modern sensibilities. Each Darkland tale is sharp, provocative and darkly comic, mining that seam of sedition and psychological drama that always featured in the best of Scottish literature. And this book, Hex, is about Gaelis Duncan, who was murdered for being a witch in the witch trials. She is visited on the night before her execution. She's visited by a witch who is a time traveller, who actually is there to hear her last night and speak to her and comfort her. It's a very, very feminist book, about the misogyny that has led to women's persecution and witch trials, and it's written by a poet, so it's really beautifully written book, I feel, even though it's also very, very horrific. And yeah, it was a short read. It's only 100 pages, but I think it is a short but important read, and I really enjoyed this. So thank you for sending it to me, Sally. Then I read a really sweet graphic novel full of lovely representation in it. It's called Mooncakes, and I think when I read the back, the people who wrote the book and the illustrator, they decided they were just writing stories about things that they would want to read about, and it became this graphic novel, and there are 2 out now, and I think I want to read the second one. It wasn't fantastic, but it was really lovely and quite, again, very cozy, magical. So the main character lives with her 2 grandmothers who are a couple, so they are a lesbian couple who are grandparents, and they have raised her, and she has hearing aids. So there's disability rep, there's LGBTQIA plus rep, because her friend from childhood turns up and they are a non-binary werewolf, and so they're trying to solve a mystery of a demon that's in the local forest, and then they there's a little romance between them. So it was just very, very sweet and a really nice book. I love the illustrations and I thought it was very cute. So I said I read 10 books, actually it was 9, because I think I've got one listed twice on my Goodreads. But the last thing I've just finished today, and I finished listening to it and I loved it. It was Wandering Souls by Cecile Pan, who it's one of the long lists for the Women's Prize. You may fall off your chair because you know I'm a backlist girl, so I generally don't read the latest prize winning books. But I've got caught up in the excitement by the plod along, but Charlie and Gemma and Alice had their first live plod along on Sunday talking about the Women's Prize, because if you don't know, they're reading the Women's Prize long list and they're going to make predictions. They're doing this whole Women's Prize thing. And I was like, right, I'm just going to look up which ones I fancy, and I found Wandering Souls on one of the audiobook services that I've been investigating, and I have a video coming out about that soon. But Wandering Souls is a really harrowing but really great book. I really enjoyed it, and it is about a Vietnamese girl called Anne and her 2 brothers who are boat people. So the Vietnamese boat people were the refugees who left Vietnam, and because of the regime there, the communist regime there, where people were being sent to re-education camps. Her father is an English teacher and they had relatives in America who would write to them, so the family felt that they weren't safe, so they send their oldest children on ahead of them, the 3 oldest children on ahead of them, in a boat to Hong Kong. And they make it safely to Hong Kong despite some trials and tribulations, and wait for the rest of their family. And tragically, the rest of the family are killed and drowned on the trip over. So the story is about these 3 young teenagers in 1970, I want to say 77 or 78, and their journey as refugees within the camps in Hong Kong to a refugee centre here in the UK, and their lives, and this sort of themes of intergenerational trauma is a theme in there, grief and refugee experience. And I think it's just such a relevant book, particularly here in the UK with what's been going on with the government legislation about migrants to the UK, which is horrendous. And yeah, when you read this book, and then what was pretty poignant in it is interspersed between the story of the sister and her 2 brothers, we have the ghost of one of their younger siblings telling us about what he's viewing for them, and the sort of spirits of their ancestors and their family are watching over them. And so one of the voices is their younger sibling, who I think dies at the age of 7, and he is narrating part of it. And then we have another voice narrating a part of it, reading lots of information about the Vietnam War. And it's called Wandering Souls for obvious reasons and for less obvious reasons. So Wandering Souls, they feel rootless, like they're continually searching for a home. And I think, you know, the experience they have getting from Vietnam, from their home, through this awful grief period. They're staying in these refugee centres, and then they finally are given a council flat in London, and so they feel like these wandering souls. And then there is, I'm assuming because of the research done on the book, that this is an actual operation that happened in Vietnam, but there was an operation from the American army called Wandering Souls, where they would play voices into the jungle as if they were ghosts to try and frighten the Vietnamese fighters. And that was called Operation Wandering Souls. So there's kind of a few reasons of why the book is called that, but this story, we just follow the story up to the present day for these characters, and it is eye-opening, it's heartbreaking, and I think it's a very relevant book. And I would it's so far been a really successful book for me, reading the Women's Prize books. I'm going to read a few of them this year, I think. But yeah, highly recommend it. Really well written and harrowing, but uplifting at points as well, because they're continually questioning the decision that led to them leaving Vietnam, and the decisions that they were made, and the things that they could have done, and whether their lives would have turned out differently if they had gone to America rather than the UK, and lots of soul searching, really. I really enjoyed this book, and I listened to the audio and it was fantastic. This video has gone on far too long, so sorry this ramble is very rambly. I was going to talk to you about things that I want to do in April, but I think I'm going to split this. I'm going to talk about my April reading plans at another point, because I do have some, but hopefully you enjoyed this rambling nonsense. Have you read any of these books? Are you planning on reading any of these books? Have you read the Women's Prize books or any of the long list? I've read 2. I read Stoneblind last year, didn't love it. I've got Wandering Souls now that I've done, and yeah, I think I'm really interested in reading the Louise Kennedy book, which is set in Belfast during the Troubles, and my family are from Belfast, so I also have kind of an interest in that. And yeah, I am looking forward to reading that, and Pod by Laline Paul, because The Bees was one of my favourite books about 10 years ago when it was released. I think it was about 10 years ago, wasn't it? It was in the last 10 years anyway. So, and I love books set in an animal society. So Pod is about dolphins. I'm really looking forward to that one. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. Hopefully, if you like this rambling nonsense, if you've not been here before, you might consider subscribing. Not sure why you would, but if you would. Also, drop me a little emoji in the comments to let me know you got to the end of the video, if you did. And hopefully I'll see you again here soon. Bye! Really am intrigued by the story of Katheryn Howard, who is Henry VIII's fifth wife. Henry VIII's fifth wife.